Does it show it's recording for you? It's just kind of spinning.
Yes, it
Yep.
does. Yep. It shows
Oh,
it for me.
all right. Well, welcome Sauk Prairie Youth Hockey to their second episode of Talkin Hockey. Second episode of Talkin Hockey here. We've got a couple of folks on the call with us. The first one is a former board member. He's our goalie coach for the association, and he was our Peewee A head coach this past season. So, Tim, welcome to the call, and why don't you introduce our featured guest?
Thanks, Dave. So first of all, I just want to say, Dave, I think this is great. Kind of thinking outside the box and really providing content for the association. I think it's a great idea. So let me say, and thanks for having me. I really appreciate it. Today's guest is Jim Walsh. He's a friend of mine. We've been friends for over 40 years now, which is kind of nuts to think about. But there was recently a article about Bill Beanie and USA Hockey, and thinking back, Walshy had played for Beanie for some time up at Middlebury College, won a few national championships up there. So I thought Jim would really be a good kind of person to talk to about his experiences at that level, and also just kind of growing up playing hockey. He and I actually kind of took two different paths, but ended up playing the same division in college hockey. So thought Jim would be a good resource to talk about that, and then some of his experiences as well, growing up through youth hockey, high school, college, and then after college hockey. So without further ado, please welcome Jim Walsh. So Jim, just to start, one, thanks for doing this. Really appreciate it. And then two, as growing up and as you were kind of starting to learn the game, talk about some of your influences and what kind of helped you fall in love with the sport, and then who might have helped in that in that scenario of just kind of helping you in the game and really influencing you to play the game.
Well, it's funny that you asked that of all people, because the only reason that I got into hockey was because your dad had you into hockey and your brother Mike. And then my father obviously was friends with your father. They started talking, and then that's really the genesis of it. Was my dad had never played hockey, and your dad was into hockey, and we lived right down the road from each other, and then that was pretty much it. And your dad was my first coach, and then really from there it was just probably my dad. I know that sounds generic to say, but he was probably my biggest influence. He was just there for all the practices, all the games, and he was really the one that was constant throughout my career, through coaches and different teams and organizations and everything. So he was probably the biggest one throughout. And then I had some other coaches along the way, obviously Beanie and a couple of others. So it was a good experience. And the start of it was really just living in the neighborhood. And you think about just how weird life would be if you didn't grow up in that neighborhood, and maybe if you played basketball or something, who knows what would have happened. So that was the beginning of it.
Great, thanks. You want to just kind of go over your hockey career and kind of, obviously it started, we were playing together when we were little, but then just kind of go through just the course of your career, really, just to kind of give everybody a background.
So I went through the system in Nashua, which back in the day, I don't know what it's like now, but it was very good hockey back in the day. You really just wanted to play for the local high school. There was no juniors or anything. So it was really just youth hockey, and then played travel hockey, I think, after a couple of years of youth hockey, then did the high school route, and then went to prep school for a few years. And then after that, I went to college. So pretty standard, I'd say, for some New England kids. The only difference would be prep school versus high school, just to get the extra year for experience wise and maturity. But pretty standard. Then went to Middlebury, played 4 years there, and we'll talk about it. But that was a lot of fun. Tim went to a lot of those games, and we played against each other, so that was even better. And then just kind of a year after that, and then now just really coaching my son, kind of coming full circle. So it was good. Could have been better, could have been worse. So pretty standard, I think, for most New England kids.
So yeah, so you mentioned obviously playing for Beanie. He coached New England College, where I played as well years before I was there, but arguably one of the best Division III coaches I would say ever. But so talk about a little bit just about playing for Coach Beanie at Middlebury. I mean, I talked to him a few times after you guys had won a couple of championships, and he's a real he's a good coach just by talking to him.
Yeah.
But just kind of talk about what it was like playing for him during those 4 years.
Well, I always even think about it now. He was like, when you see him in interviews now, he's really soft spoken, really nice, but playing for him was definitely not easy. And it was really a number of different things that he did, but probably the biggest thing that stood out to me was it wasn't necessarily the drills. We'll talk about the small area games and things like that, but it was really he just challenged you a lot in practice. The practices were a lot harder at times than some of the games. He made us think a lot, make quick decisions, and really tried to bring a competitive game-like atmosphere into the practices. And then that goes along with some of the players obviously bought in, and he did have a presence about him, even though he wasn't a big guy, didn't scream, didn't swear or anything. So the biggest thing, and we'll talk about a lot of the other things, but was just the fact that he really just was all over you, challenging you in practice. And I remember some practices we walk off and be like, geez, we didn't think we did well, and we probably did pretty well, but could have done better. And then come game time, it was really just more of a rehearsal than the practices were, because the practices were just so hard.
So can you just give an example of something like that? And I think that you're coaching, right? Dave coaches, I coach as well, and I think that we try to find that line of really finding that area to push the player to get them to be their best without kind of crossing that line, if you will. So to talk about maybe something like that where Coach Beanie had really challenged you guys, and you guys got off the ice thinking that you weren't up to par.
Yeah, I mean that happened more often than not. And he would time it during the season where if we kind of saw it coming, if we had won like 4 or 5 games in a row, we knew the next week of practice was just going to be brutal, and he was going to throw all sorts of stuff at us. And if we tied or lost a game, it might not be as difficult because he'd try to lift us up. So he was good about that, but really just a lot. So as an example, they talk about the small area games, and he always added something else to it. So it wasn't just like a cross ice 3-on-3. It was something that whether you're on defense, forward, you always had to be thinking about responsibilities, whether it be on defense, supporting the puck, be in the right area for an outlet pass. If you're on offense, doing a quick transition, things like that. So there's always a little variable in there to not just make it a 3-on-3. It'd be a 3-on-3 where you had to make a cross ice pass, or one forward could only stay in one area of the ice, or the goaltenders were facing the opposite direction. So it was always a small area game with some sort of caveat. And if it was just like 3-on-3 cross ice, most kids can do that. But when you throw in the fact that, okay, everybody has to be thinking about their responsibilities on defense, offense all the time when they're out there, then that's really what would make it the toughest. And I remember there was I think one practice after Williams, we actually beat him, and then we came in and he was just in one of his moods. And you could just see it happening, like you do a 2-on-1 and the pass goes behind somebody or hits off their skate. And then next drill, guy misses the net, or the defenseman doesn't make a right pass. And we're just sitting there like, it's coming. And then he'd just explode on us. And then he'd challenge us and say, all right, do you guys want to finish the practice or not finish the practice? And then usually we ended up coming into a pretty good spot by the end of the practice, but it was probably that's the one time, sorry about that, guys, that kind of stands out. We had just beaten Williams, and then just coming in where the next day we kind of had an idea that it was going to be like that. And we went through some of the drills, and he just kind of called us in, and that was it. He said, "You guys either decide if you want to be on the ice or if you don't. If you don't, I don't care. If you do, then fine." And we kind of turned it around from there. So that's probably the most concrete example I can give. I don't know if that answers the question or not, but okay.
I think so. So since we're talking about Beanie and small area games, Tim referenced the USA Hockey article, and I'd read that, and they asked him if he was coaching a youth hockey team. I think he said he'd spend about 98% of his time on small area games. And then he said at Middlebury, it was like 80% of his time of the practice time was on small area games. Is that your record as well?
Yeah, that's fairly accurate. We'd obviously do some power play time at the end and do a warm up, but a lot of it was the small area games with that added variable or the caveat where you had to think and know your responsibilities both ways. And then the added layer of that was you just really made it competitive. Like if you got scored on, you'd know about it. You hear from him, and he'd let you know that in the game that's a goal. So he'd certainly let you know about that. So there was a number of different layers to it. And the small area games really was he started that back, probably he started coaching 40 years ago, and his whole philosophy it was about making quick decisions, knowing your responsibilities, because rarely do you carry the puck from the top of the circles to the other end of the ice. It's all about small area games, making quick decisions, doing the right things with the puck and without the puck, both on defense and offense. So he tried to really incorporate that into as many of the small area games as he could, and he was good at it.
Awesome. That's a phenomenal approach, and obviously it worked very well for you guys. How many national championships did you win when you were there?
When I was there, we won 3. So my sophomore, junior, senior year, yeah, it was fun, yeah.
So looking back at your time at Middlebury, what would you say your favorite small area game was?
Well, it's funny that you ask. I'll try to show you one. I have my my whiteboard because it'd probably be easier to explain it. And this is one. I don't know if you can see it or not. You can see it probably now, right? Okay, so you divide the ice in half, and you have two nets, and then you have 2D on this side, and then 3 forwards on this side. Or it could be anybody, really. It could be just kind of position agnostic. Doesn't have to be D on one side, forwards on the other. Then you'd have the other team's forwards on this side, and then 2D. So these 5 can't cross this side, and these 5 can't cross that side. So it's a 3-on-2 over here. So you get to work at some power play, some 2-on-1, some isolation. And then the other part of it is on defense, you have to work with the other forwards, make sure that they're open, make a good decision, good pass. So you can't just bank it over because the other team will get it and send it back over. So these forwards are shooting on this net, and these forwards are shooting on that net. The set of D is working with these forwards, and these 2D are working with these forwards. And it's pretty simple. I've used it with my son's team, and they really like it. They like the fact that they get some opportunities on offense, and then the defense like it because they can. So if the D gets the puck over here, they can shoot on net. They can just dump it over, or the forwards hopefully will get open. And so the forwards on this side have to be aware of what's happening on that side, and then the D kind of have to cover them too. So the way that the kids figure it out is they might have a forward here, and a forward over here, and then the D have to kind of figure out who to cover. The kids liked it a lot. It's a high tempo. We usually do it for about 40 seconds at a time, and the kids are gassed by the end. And we just rotate. So we have 2 color jerseys. We'll have, let's say, green and blue or something like that, and then on the whistle, this set of 5 will just rotate over to this side. This set will go out, and then we'll bring in 5 more players on this side to kind of keep it going that way. But that was one that we used a lot at Middlebury. He had 2 nets a lot. And then you can do it where you have 2 nets over here on this side, just play it that way. But we just kind of throw the nets at the goal line. So that was probably my favorite. Beanie just loved those small area games, and it was always something where you had to think, divide the ice in half, and you can any variation of that where you put the nets here, you put the nets back to back. He'd do that a lot, so it was never a dull moment when it came to the small area games. But that was definitely my favorite.
Yeah, nice. All right, so that was your favorite at Middlebury. It sounds like
Yep.
you're using that, coaching your kid, his team. So what level is that at?
They'll be second year Peewees.
Okay.
So Peewee Major. So they just finished Peewee Minor this year.
Nice.
And I think maybe if they were like squirts, it might be you could still use it, still do it, but they really just enjoyed it a lot this year. It was good to see.
Awesome. Thanks for sharing that.
Yeah, no problem.
All right, so 3 national championships up at Mid. You know, you don't just win it, right? You don't just have 20 guys that just play, and you don't just win it that way, right? There's a bond between that group of players, and you know, you were fortunate enough to have that happen 3 times in a row. But talk about that, you know, that bond and the importance of really having a, you have your teammates, and you're going to have role players, and you're going to have your leaders, and you're going to have, you're going to have your guys that dominate the game at times, and others that are sitting on the bench at times, right? I mean, that's kind of the way Beanie was. But talk about that bond, and can you kind of capture the essence of what that what that was over the course of those 3 championships you guys won?
Yeah, it really was, and I know it'll sound kind of generic too, but it was a lot of the guys that came before us. I probably wouldn't say this 10 or 15 years ago, but now as you get a little older, you kind of look at things differently. But they were just a great group of guys. A lot of them came from Canada, and they probably won't admit it, but they were there for hockey first, and then Middlebury was a good education second. And they were from Montreal, so they really kind of set the standard of just being competitive in practice and holding yourself accountable, and really just having a good bond with the players on your team. And you didn't necessarily have to get along with. So they started it, and then we did a good job of continuing it. And you didn't necessarily have to be best friends with everybody on the team, but you kind of had to hold yourselves accountable and really be competitive in practice. I'd say that those are the biggest things, and it's not necessarily the worst thing to say something to somebody in practice like, "Hey, come on, you got to give me a better pass than that. Like, what are you doing there? You can't give me a suicide pass like that, or just don't give me a pass in my skates, or you got to cover that guy. That's your guy." There's nothing. We didn't think that there was anything wrong with that, and sometimes it went over well, other times it didn't. Not everybody did it, but there was always that sense of you didn't want to let your teammates down, and you really did have a bond. I'm still good friends with a lot of those guys on the team now, and we still keep in touch. So it's been something that pretty special. I think most college hockey teams have it. I think there's still a lot of guys that keep in touch, or gals that keep in touch with their college hockey, but Beanie was the other one. Really, without his direction, it would have been, we could have just been another team. Really, we had some good players, we had great goalies, we played well, and he kind of led the ship. So it was really a combination of things, but the bond was really strong with us. We all bought into what Beanie was doing, and really just held each other accountable during practice. And then when you hold each other accountable during practice and do well in the games, it's kind of the reward. So.
Yeah, thanks. That's a great answer, and I think accountability, understanding your role, and then having good leadership and a legacy.
Yeah.
To kind of pick up from the older guys as you come in and learn how to play the game, and play at that level, right? It's it's a different animal when you go from high school to college.
Yeah.
And then in your case, right? So you went from college, free agent, made yourself, I don't know, East Coast Hockey League team in Chesapeake, right? With my gloves, if I remember correctly.
That's right, and your gloves were still down there. I traded them in. Yeah, that is
but
correct.
So but just talk a little bit about after college and you know, I mean, first of all, to make the team, you know, undrafted and a free agent. So that means that you literally went to camp and you said, all right, you know, I want to make this team, and you did, and you know that doesn't just happen overnight, right? There's a lot of hard work that goes into that, and you know, we did a lot of workouts during those times. So but just kind of talk about that experience and you know that culture of now instead of playing for your education, now you're playing for a job. If you could touch on that just a little bit. I know the East Coast League wasn't too long, but you know you still there's still an accomplishment there. And then going over to Sweden and playing.
Yeah, it was kind of the best of times and the worst of times. I mean, best of times you sign the contract. There was a lot of players there that I played against that were all Americans and everything, both at Division III, not so much obviously all Americans at Division I, but it was tough. You get there and you don't know anybody. You're fighting for a spot just with everybody else, and everybody's in the same locker room. They treat the veterans a little better than everybody else, and everybody else just gets thrown in. And then was short, obviously. I signed the contract, and then we went on an 0-3 streak up in like Wheeling, Toledo, and another one of those towns, maybe Huntington, West Virginia. And then I think at the tail end of the trip, they brought in and he still is to this day, and it wasn't, obviously they weren't comparing me to him, but he was the leading goal scorer in the history of University of Michigan, Denny Felsner. And then they just started building it up, and I probably could have done things a little bit differently, maybe have a little more of an edge, and confidence certainly was an issue a little bit for me back then. But you just do the best with what you have, and it worked out for a short period of time. And then at the end, went overseas to Sweden, which was a good experience. Was obviously one of the lower levels over there, but still seeing how they play and what their philosophy is on hockey, and it's very different than what it is over here. So it was good to see those contrasting styles of hockey, and it was a good experience on both fronts. Does that answer it?
Yes, thank you. Yeah.
Okay. Yeah. Okay.
All right, let's transition a little bit and talk about youth hockey today. So as you're watching your son go through it, yeah, how has the game changed since you played?
Well, I think, and probably Tim would agree, I think the kids are a little better now overall. I think the game just in the NHL is a lot faster. The goaltenders are better than they were, and everybody can shoot the puck. And what really has changed at the youth level is it really is become more of a, like, you really have to develop the players, and there's just so much competition around here. There are, and this is on the South Shore of Boston, so obviously not the same as everywhere in the country, but there's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. There's probably 6 club teams that are within like 15 minutes of where I live in Hingham. So there are 2. There's one in Hingham, 2 in Hingham, 1 in Rockland, where we play, 1 in Kingston, which is the next town over, one right down the road. So there's just a lot of competition. So youth hockey has changed in that respect. There's a lot more competition for the kids, and the game has obviously changed too. It's gotten a lot faster, a lot more skilled. Or the skilled players are not necessarily the biggest, but they just think a lot faster and do things a lot quicker. So the youth hockey game has really changed, and Tim will agree. Back then, it was just you showed up at the rink, you played, and generally the best athletes or the biggest kids would be the best players on the team, and that would continue probably up until about high school. And now it's a lot different. Kids are getting specialized, and there's just a lot more competition. So it's changed the game in a lot of respects. It's a lot faster and a lot more skilled, I think, probably now than it was, even at the youth level. At least I think over here. I don't know what it's like everywhere else, but that's what we see as coaches out here.
All right. So we talked about the small area game, and you gave us that example of the one you like. As you're coaching your child's Peewee team, what's a typical Peewee practice in Hingham looking like?
Yeah, well, we do a lot of the same drills that we did in college, and we don't do the power play or anything like that. But we'll probably do like a typical practice will be maybe a 5 to 8 minute warm up. Get some passes where we start out. I'll show you one of the ones we do. Can you see that? Okay.
Yep.
All right. Where we'll have two lines here. The first player goes out, makes a pass, gets it back, and then gets a pass from this line, goes in, and then this line gets a pass, gets back, goes in, gets a pass from that line. So they're skating backwards. They make a pass, get it back, make a pass, and then skate in. Or we're just doing something simple where the players go out, get a pass, and then go out to this side. We just alternate like that. That'll be probably about 10 minutes of it. And then we'll a lot of it, at least beginning of the year, I felt that it would have been nice to do all small area games, but I can't say that that's what we did all year. We did a lot of like one-on-one battles along the boards. I felt that the kids and the coaching staff just felt, and I know we're talking about 11-year-old kids, so keep that in mind, but we just felt that the kids needed to learn how to protect the puck, retrieve the puck out of the corner, keep their head up. So we did a lot of those like skill areas, and we always broke it into stations. I took half the kids, did one drill, and then the other coach did another drill. So I'll do something like, let's see. Like I'll have the net here, and then I'll have 2 forwards and a D. Just do a 2-on-1 in this area, and the goal's here. They have to shoot on the goal. So really just a small area 2-on-1, something like that. And then on the other side, the other coach might do just a shooting drill or some sort of skill building exercise or something like that. And then another one that I do is I'll do it on this side, a forward and a D. And then I'll have somebody else, another forward. The forward can use this other forward as an outlet. So they make a quick pass, try to get open. The D's covering them. Then they get open, get a shot. Next puck, forward makes a pass, tries to get open. So it's like a one-on-one in here with support up top for the forward. So the second forward has to get open, number one. They have to make a good pass and then get a shot on net. So I'd probably do 2 of those and would do that. That'll be another maybe 8 minutes through. So then that brings us to about 26 minutes, and that would do like that 3-on-2 cross ice, and we might do some generic. We did need to work on the breakout. And I know it's a drill that's been around for about 50 years, but just a breakout and do a 3-on-2 regroup, something like that. So that's probably what it would look like for the majority of the year. But next year, we're going to really start doing the small area games. The kids kind of came in with a bit of a deficit of knowledge of in-zone coverage, a lot of the basic stuff they just didn't have for whatever reason. So we did work on that a little bit. And I think now this year we'll probably shoot for maybe 60 to 65% of the practice being small area games, at least I would think this year. So that's what a typical practice would look like. And I do think that they should extend it to maybe an hour and 10 minutes, an hour and 20 minutes, because 50 minutes is, I think, too short, even for youth hockey. Maybe if they just did 2 days a week, an hour and 20, I don't know. But that probably won't happen.
Do you guys share the ice? Are you guys the sole team on the ice, or do you guys?
We share the ice, so we have 2 shared practices, and then 1 skills. So skills are just maybe 15 minutes of line skating. Then they do 6 stations, and then just rotate through the stations. So it's just strictly skills. They have a number of different age groups there, a number of different levels within the age groups. But next year we're going to get at least kind of one of those smaller rinks, a full sheet. I know they talk about the small area games, but I do think that there's some value in carrying the puck and with your head up, with pressure against the defender, waiting for support, curling against the boards, and I think that those are some of the things that you can get in the full ice. But this year we did 2 shared practices, one skill section. Next year we're going to do one of the smaller sheets, full ice, and then we'll probably share an ice and still have the skills. So we try to make the most of it, but
cool. Yeah, we share the ice up here as well. So we're typically working with a half a sheet, and I'm kind of glad you brought up a little bit of that. And you and I personally have talked about ADM for years now, and kind of the benefit to it, and I can't not laugh at that. That's awesome.
I know.
But we've talked about the ADM model for some time now, and I think our philosophy, or at least looking at it, I think the vision of it has kind of changed a little bit, right? And I think that we're a little bit more for it than against it. And I think the reason why youth hockey is so much better, I think, is that all those kids are getting more puck touches, and they're getting more experience than just the good athletes when we were growing up, right? I think that's kind of the difference there. But you also kind of touched that on as well, as about your players not really having, I don't want to say hockey sense, but that's kind of what it sounded like you were alluding to, that they were kind of not, maybe missing a little bit of kind of understanding the game on the full ice. So the question is really, for ADM, I think it's good for the players and skill development. But as you're getting older, right, we're getting more towards a system structure. So where do you see that? Where do you see that gap, and why do you think that's there? Or do you see a gap, rather?
I definitely do. I definitely do see a gap. I think a lot of it, and this is probably sacrilegious to say, but they always say the whole mantra of "let the game be the teacher," and I think that's true. But the NHL player Nicholas Lidstrom, yeah, he can learn through the game. He sees the game. He knows what he needs to do when he has the puck or when he doesn't have the puck, or who's open, who's not open. But for a 10-year-old kid, how do they know how to execute a 2-on-1? What do they know how to curl? Do they know how to stop and wait for support? Do they know how to protect the puck and the board? So I think that I need to, at least with my team, to build the fundamentals of, okay, when you enter the zone, you have a few options. You can take the puck into the corner, you can go to the net, you can shoot the puck, you can curl, you can buy some time by stopping on the boards, waiting for support. So I think that part of it is let the teacher be the game, but the kids have to know what they need to draw on in order to be successful. So going into the corner, do they just make it out in front? Well, that's one thing they can do, or they can protect the puck, send it out high to the D. So I think part of that is, let the game be the teacher, but I think also part of my responsibility is to show the kids, okay, when you get the puck in this situation, you have 4 options. These are your 4 options. Draw on the best one. If it works, great. If it doesn't, then at least you tried one of the options, as opposed to just banging the puck to the net and going to the net. And I think Tim probably, we've talked about that, and I think you'd probably agree with that too, that developing hockey sense, I think you can, to a certain extent. You can tell kids what to do, and whether or not they do it, that's kind of up to them.
All right. With the whole ADM model and the emphasis on individual skill development and the small area games, like we're talking, that philosophy is very different for a lot of the parents whose kids you're coaching now. They grew up and it was a little different philosophy. So how are you finding that communication with the parents going, if it's different than what their experience or what they're expecting?
Yeah, that's definitely, I can see that being very tough if the kids just, and I think Beanie mentioned it, if the kids just playing games all practice, the parents might be like, well, what are you doing? So I can see that being a challenge. I'm lucky enough where the parents, I think, kind of buy into what we do as coaches. We do have some open communication, and we talk to them. This is what we'd like to see out of our kids, and this is how we kind of want to play the game. And I think that the parents saw at the beginning of the year that the kids were at a deficit in certain areas. We worked on that, and they improved it. So I guess to answer the question, communication is obviously a big thing. I think the parents kind of need to know what the objective is develop players, and this is how you think the best way to do it is. And if it works, great. If not, you can change it around. But I think probably the problems would come in if the parents don't know what you're trying to do with a player. They go to a practice, they don't understand any of the drills, they don't know what's going on, and then they see the game, and then let's say the game goes bad, then the parents are probably like, what is going on here? But if you can, I think if the communication's there, and if the kids understand kind of what the expectation is too, and you communicate to that the parents, and I've been very lucky with the parents on that I've had for the years. It's just been they've just been great, and there's been no problems. So I think probably the communication is the biggest thing.
All right.
So as you transition, with the kids and the kids are getting a little bit older, right? And they're kind of starting to be a little bit more independent. How do you see the kids, what's their mentality like? Is it, are they coming to the rink ready to practice? Do you have to kind of reel them in every once in a while because they don't quite have the focus that you thought they might have, or and I certainly understand you get 50 minutes a couple times a week. That's not a lot of time, so that means that you really want to maximize your practice there.
Yep. Yeah, that's definitely tough. I'm lucky again. A lot of the kids, we're not at the elite level, so we kind of don't have those issues that come with coaching an elite level athlete or parent, for that matter. So we're one step down from that, and we're one of the better teams in the league. So we have a lot of the kids that really do buy in, and I know that's an overused saying, and I can't believe I'm saying it, but the kids really do enjoy being around the rink. They enjoy the practices, and that's one thing I also wanted to mention with that the practices with Beanie, even though they were very difficult, they were always fun. You never had a drill where you're like, oh, I can't believe we're doing this again. So it's always something fresh, always something new, and it was always really fun, even though it was pretty challenging. I think you can have something that's fun. The kids are skating around, they're working hard, but at the same time, you're challenging them and pushing them a little bit. So most of the kids do show up ready to play. We've had a few times where we've had to reel them in a little bit to get them focused, but it's a really good group of kids. And I was listening to a podcast on the head of the Finnish Hockey Federation, and he said really the kids, and I thought it was pretty interesting. The kids really want three things. They want to feel part of something that's important, like a hockey program that's important to them, and they want to feel a part of that. Number two, they want to have some autonomy, some independence, and then they want to be around people that they feel are contributing to their success. And he said that's where you find most of the kids respond the best in those environments where they have something that they feel a part of. They also feel autonomy, so they can make decisions on the ice, and they feel like they can buy in a little bit, but then they're also part of an environment that wants them to achieve their goals and wants them to get better. So I think next year, after listening to that, that's probably something we'll sit down with the coaches, and that's probably what we'll do. But for the most part, we've been very lucky with the kids, and we've had to not yell at them a little bit, but bring them in and get them a little more focused. But for the most part, they've been very good when they show up to the rink.
All right. Well, we're coming down to the end here, so I think we'll move into our lightning round here. We each got two quick hitter questions for you. So Tim, start it off.
All right. So favorite hockey moment in your career?
It was probably, I don't know if you you remember it, but it was probably after our one of our championships, I think. Either in a dorm or something. You were there. That was probably one of my favorite moments of hockey. Just having the opportunity to share with somebody that you've known for so long is just, yeah, it's pretty hard to describe.
All right. How about as you look at, coaching your kid? What's been your most memorable coaching moment?
The most memorable one so far was just he went on the ice. We were playing a pretty good team, the Islanders, and he had made a play. He went in the corner and beat a few guys. I think it was a girl, so I shouldn't say just guys, but guy and girl made a nice play. I think it gave us a lead or tied up the game, and he came off the ice and he was just like, "Dad, did you see that?" Like, yeah. So that was probably the favorite one so far.
Awesome.
All right. Best player you've ever shared the ice with?
Shared the ice with it. It was only probably just in practice, but I'd have to say it'd be Derek Clancy, probably in Chesapeake, or Matt Robbins, probably one of those two. Yeah, Clancy was good. He was a good player in the East Coast League.
All right.
And actually, there was a Russian from Sweden that was pretty good. Not from Sweden, but when I was playing in Sweden, the guy from Russia, he was pretty good too. Agers Razgals was his name.
Last one here, and I want you to be honest with me.
Yeah.
So you're at Middlebury.
Yeah.
You're playing against Tim. Tim's in net. Did you light him up? Did you give him the hook?
I did score on him. He doesn't remember. He says he doesn't remember. I did score on him. It was the end of the period. It was pretty cheesy goal. It was defense sent it in the zone, and it bounced off, and it was like a cheesy wraparound. It hit off his skate and went in. But I did score on him, and he did get pulled out of the game, but it wasn't due to performance. It was because he pulled his hamstring.
All right.
Do you remember that?
I remember leaving the game.
Yeah. It was
Well,
it was your hamstring. Yeah, you couldn't even stand after the game.
Yeah, it was bad.
Yeah.
So he is our goalie coach, and in his defense, he tells our goalies they got to have a short memory. So that's probably why he doesn't remember. Right.
That's right. Yeah, you have to have a short memory. That's for sure.
All right. Well, hey, Jim, really appreciate the time tonight.
Thank you.
Thank you, and I'll turn it over to Tim to close us out here.
Yeah. So again, Dave, I just think it's great. Given this content, been thinking out of the box. I just think it's a really nice, neat thing to do here. And Jim, I really appreciate your time. You have some great experience, and I think that it's just good to just kind of reconnect and
yeah.
We've just have so much experience together. It's just been a lot of fun. So
yeah, thanks. Yeah, likewise.
Just really appreciate it, and keep pushing forward and having fun with the kids, and stay well during this time.
You want to say goodbye? I guess not. Yeah, that's funny about the Target. I don't know if they allowed the mattresses to get returned. I can't believe I did that.